What's good, everybody? We back with another episode of Sports Chaos with Dame. Today, I got a special guest with me, my boy Deuce. We're gonna be getting into the college football championship as well as the NFL playoffs. Of course, we're gonna start off with the national championship since that will be Monday night. It's the only game left in college. It'll be easier to just transition to the NFL. So we're gonna get into that Miami and Indiana matchup. What you think about that?
I'm split on Indiana. I think it's gonna be in the trenches a lot. I think it's gonna come down to how can Miami attack Mendoza and get him off a spot, and how can Fernando respond to the attack that's coming. The trenches gonna be rough. It's gonna be the heaviest O line, the heaviest D line, most physical and violent we've seen all year against each other. So it's gonna be tough to see, but also I think I give Miami a little bit of the edge because Carson Beck is playing cool, calm, and collected football at a very right time where a lot of chaos happening for Miami season. And I see Miami competing a lot better than people give them a chance. They're that is five underdogs at home essentially. They're a away team, but essentially the home team and against a hot Indiana team. And I feel like Miami is gonna come out and punch them in the mouth. And it's gonna come down to who can get the biggest stop, who can get the biggest play. And I feel like Miami has more firepower with Malik Tony, with the running back, and with Carson back, and that defense can score at any time just like the offense can. And I don't think Indiana's faced a team with this much to prove and this much violence and physicality all game. They got tested against Ohio State, but Miami's a whole different monster. With the Mario coming from the Saban background, you know they're gonna be disciplined. You're gonna be ready to play football, and it's a lot better when you're playing at home. You ain't gotta travel to Atlanta or you gotta go to the Rose Bowl. You ain't gotta go nowhere. You at home at the crib, eating right, but then pretty much saying, I think Miami comes out and wins. I think it come out and win 28-8, 21.
28-21. It's funny to me because it's interesting because Miami played Cal last year with Mendoza at quarterback, and that game was a shootout. Miami ended up winning a crazy game. Of course, that was the Cam Ward days. The defense wasn't as strong. Defense took a big step this year with the portal was big, getting Keontae Scott and players like that. But another thing that transitions is he'll have a somewhat feel for what that pass rush is. Although I think that this year they took another step and are that much more dominant. I think with those two combined, I mean, you can say Bain's the best in the country, but with those two combined, that's definitely the best tandem in the country for sure. And then on the other side of the ball, like you said, it's going to start in the trenches. And you got Marquise Bell at left tackle, big dude, 6'8", 6'9", almost 400 pounds, I think it is. And then on the other side, you got Francis Mariano, which will be a top 10 pick in the upcoming draft, and he can move. So Miami has a physical offensive line. The size difference, I know a lot of people's like, well, the smaller guys that had a leverage. Indiana's team is old. Like the comparison of like 24-year-old lineman to 20-year-old lineman, I get all that. But I think when you're talking about the elites of the elites, and you've seen them win in the trenches against the best team in the SEC, the best defense in the SEC, which was Texas A&M. Then you get to see them go against the best defense in the country in Ohio State and affect the game the way they did. And that goes for both sides of the ball. So I think, and then even if you want to reach out to like, or speak on like a game like Ole Miss where you look and you might not think that Bain had much of an impact because the stats don't say it, but when you look at his win rates, he was still getting there, being able to get pressures, although he may have not had any sacks on, the stat sheet. So even when they're not winning, they're winning because you're going to be thinking about 3 and 4 all night. But on the flip side of that, Indiana, for the most part, they do a great job of staying in front of the sticks, being in third and shorts where, that the run can be an option. And if they're able to do that consistently, that can cause a problem for Miami's defense because one thing about Miami is if IU plays at a fast tempo, Miami doesn't really sub on the defensive line. And there's been a couple times in this playoffs where you've seen teams go up tempo, whether it was 2-minute offense or whatever the case may be, and 3 and 4 is out there gassed, and then when they got to come off the field, the defense just ain't the same. So it's going to be it's going to be a battle of really trying to keep Indiana behind the sticks because they don't never really have to play in that territory. As long as they're in that little third and short, third and manageable, it makes it comfortable for them because that's their game. Now, with that being said, on the flip side of that, Mendoza has the ability to scramble. I don't think he's like an elite scrambler, of course, but he can get out the pocket. So the thing is will he be more willing to use his legs in this game if 3 and 4 are able to get off the edge and cause problems? Because he likes to get the ball out quick, but he still has to make his reads, and there's a lot of RPO action. I don't know. It's going to be a super interesting matchup, but I think that people like you, to go on what you said, like people are just discrediting Miami, and I think it's disrespectful because up until this point, they've had the toughest road.
I also think for Indiana, on the flip side, like you saying, Indiana to have a chance, they have to establish a run game early. I know it's gonna be hard against those dogs up front and that front seven that attacks and flies to the football, but you have to establish that run because if you make Indiana one dimensional, it can be very tough because in the Penn State game they became one dimensional late and Penn State got a big lead. Mendoza saved the day and threw a great ball and had a great catch. When you make them one dimensional, that's where the RPO game does not exist. You make these guys like Tantanga or Cooper, you make these guys that haven't been high volume receivers turn into guys that have to create. And that's why I feel like Miami, if it turns into a shootout, I feel like Miami has a lot more firepower on both sides to stop what they're doing in the shootout and you can go score. Because Carson Beck, we're not going to disrespect Carson Beck to what he was at Georgia. It's a whole new Carson Beck, calm, cool, will ball out. And that Ole Miss game showed me a lot. The fact that he climbed the pocket, saw nothing, he didn't bail, he attacked and got downhill and ultimately won the game. And that's a what happens when you have a 5-year guy, almost 6-year guy at quarterback. And it helps, but also in these type of games where it comes down to IQ and making the right read and not losing the game for you, I just feel like Miami's a little more battle tested than Indiana. I'm not saying they're better than Indiana because to this far, but Indiana really ain't been tested but once. They beat an Alabama team that wasn't ready to play football, got punched in the mouth, couldn't respond. Ty Simpson got hurt lately, put some garbage points up. 33 in a Rose Bowl game is still a crazy thing. And they come out to beat Oregon like they did convincingly, ultimately send Dante Moore back to the NFL draft, to not the NFL draft, back to college to reprove himself. That shows a lot how good Indiana is, but still hasn't played their best football game, and they're going to play it against Miami in a tough environment at home. You know it's going to be rocky. You know that green and orange is going to be all in the stadium. Michael Irvin on the sideline acting wild. You know what's going to be there. But can you rise to the occasion and be that number one team in the country you've been all year, or are you going to fold up? And I ultimately feel like they have the ability to, but if they really ready to go into enemy territory and win a big game. And we're going to see. I really think we're going to see.
Do you think it's going to be that was actually something I was going to get to. Do you think it's going to be enemy territory? Because obviously it's a national championship, but it's still on home turf. Miami hasn't been here in so long. You got to think it's going to go crazy in Florida. They pack it out. But then on the flip side of that, these Indiana fans look like they was from Atlanta. Like that look, I told my cousin lives in Atlanta, and I had a conversation with him, and I said, if I didn't know any better, I would have thought that was a Falcons game, how much red and maroon was in there. Like, it was crazy.
Atlanta looked like it was Dirty Bird Nation in there with all that red in there, but they travel well, but man, something about that green and orange down in Miami in the Garden is going to be showing up, and you know it's going to be good to play at home.
Yeah, and I agree with you, but I'm saying, like, for a team, like, die-hard alumni, you know, former whatever relations you have with the school, and you're a Hoosiers fan, whether you was born in Indiana, whatever it is, like, this moment, you've never seen it. So some people will spend their life savings on this.
They selling out for this moment. They said they don't care the price they're going. And I love it because it creates, that's what makes college football so fun. It's not like pros. They're going to travel, and the crowd's going to be packed, and you're going to see it split. And you get to see all the big names that come back home, like Ray Lewis and Michael Irvin to the sideline. All this history on both sides in two different ways, but all coming together for the present just to create a great game. And I think it's going to be probably one of the best national championships we've seen in a long time. Two great programs that have been built really fast with two great coaches at the helm, two great quarterbacks at the helm, and two different stories. The 5 stars against the JMU stars, the 3 stars, what you want to call them, but they're here, and it's just 2 different stories, and it's gonna be a big time clash come Monday night. And I hope people understand that Miami is not a 7.5 underdog. That's a lot of disrespects going on right there. And I
It's
think
I told people I think that spread is solely just because how dominant Indiana has been. And then they know people will bite on that because every round this far, for whatever reason, whether it was if they should be in or not, to the national championship, Miami has been disrespected and not given a chance. Now, with that being said, Ohio State, not that spreads matter, Ohio State opened up as a 9.5-point favorite against Miami. So they still, as dominant as Indiana has played in their 2 games, they still had Ohio State as a bigger favorite over us than them with the way that they've seen us playing and who we've beat. So I think that tells me a lot there. Not that anything matters, but what I was getting at earlier with the trenches, man. When you look at their schedule, they got Iowa, Penn State, and Ohio State, right?
Mhm.
That's the 3 best O-lines that they played this year.
I will say Oregon just because of the 5-star rating and what it was because recruits great. And
No,
they
I'm saying
probably
Oregon's definitely a good school, but I'm saying the best O-lines they played,
Metro
like
line
trenches.
definitely Iowa and Ohio State for sure.
So, but they beat Iowa on the road 20-15. Of course, you talked about the Penn State game where he threw an absolute dime. I mean, they won that game on the road 27-24, and we know Penn State was horrible this year, even though they had high expectations. That was, and I'm pretty sure that was after the firing of James Franklin, or no? Do you remember?
I think that was a week. That may have been a week or 2. I think he got fired on an idle, and they came back and played Ohio State that following week.
Yeah, so I can't recall for sure if that was before or after he got fired. But either way, Penn State was a shit show this year. And then the Big Ten championship against Ohio State, where, I mean, not to discredit them, but Ohio State beat themselves. Turnovers in the red zone, a 20-some yard missed field goal to tie it to go to overtime.
We act like Indiana played a perfect game. Indiana just won a bar fight where they didn't play good either. Mendoza didn't look like himself. Their defense played great because they only allowed 14 points, but you still relied on a field goal and 2 touchdowns to win a ball game, and that's not going to cut it against that's what I'm saying. In your big test, you showed out and you won, but how convincingly have you won, or how dominant have you been? Like, I understand the Alabama win and the Oregon win. This isn't 2020 or 2019. That's not Nick Saban. That's not the past of Oregon we're looking at over there. That's a different ball game. And they beat up on a Alabama team that got in the playoff off of great midseason play. Didn't play best football then. Oregon, they saw Oregon once already. They knew what to prepare for, and they beat up on them, and they capitalized on their mistakes. This is where they like I said earlier in my past thing, I said they had to play their best game of the year this year, and they better not come half-stepping because that is a buzzsaw over there down in Miami, and you don't want to get behind because you get behind, it's going to be a hard time coming back.
Yeah, and as you're talking, I'm looking at the defensive ranks, and Miami is 4th in sacks, and these are defensive ranks. So Miami's 4th, IU's 9th. Miami has the 28th red zone. IU has the 43rd. So Miami wins both of those categories. Third down conversions, they're 8-9, so they're literally right there. First downs, IU has the best first down defense in the country, which in this matchup we talked about is going to be important because we know that Miami should come out and try to establish the run. And if they do, if they can beat them at the point of attack, that could be the difference in, that IU defense being comfortable or uncomfortable. Miami, on the other hand, is 21st on first downs in the country. IU's better pass defense-wise by 22 spots. Rush defense, they're both top 10. Miami is 6, IU at 2. And then yards per play is 12th to 9th, so they're in the same ballpark. Points 5 and 2. And then turnovers, IU's 13th in the country. Miami's 26th. But that's another big thing because, like you said, I don't think that Miami's going to really turn the ball over and get in their way. Carson Beck has 1 turnover, I think, since the middle of the season after the last loss. He's had 2 turnovers, and 1 was the last game, and it wasn't his fault. It was the last game or the game before, and it wasn't his fault. He's been playing lights out, so I don't think that he's going to get to this game and decide to fold against Indiana. He's played in the SEC for 5 years.
Experience Spears is gonna go a long way for Carson Beck. It's also Mendoza. Mendoza came from Cal, from a low end school to come to the big stage. I will say these are two quarterbacks that are hungry to prove to themselves. Mendoza already proved himself winning the Heisman, being number one team in the country to this point. But Carson Beck really has a chip on his shoulder because people wrote him off last year with Georgia and the year before. 2 years of Georgia that he played weren't so hot and they lost big games, couldn't establish. They said he couldn't throw a football, and look at him now. He's on the verge of winning a national championship on his last chance. Like you gotta realize it takes a lot of adversity you fought to get to this point, and people think he's just gonna go away now. I don't think he's gonna. I expected a big game from Carson Beck. I don't know if it's gonna be stats wise, leadership wise, some kind of big game where he's gonna affect. And also, if he gets his playmakers involved early, let them make it work for him, it's gonna be a lot easier game. He doesn't have to be Superman. He can just be a a glorified game manager we call it, but that's not what he is at all.
Yeah, no, for sure. And it's crazy because I think the biggest thing about this matchup and why people think it's so lopsided is because how good that IU offense is, and you don't look at Miami as a team that could put up points. And I will be real with you, and if you've watched previous videos, people will see that I always say Miami's going to win a gritty, tough game. Like I don't expect to win a shootout, but then against Ole Miss, they went out and showed if it gets like that, they can do that.
You're not
Carson
going. You're
Beck,
not going.
as long as he's comfortable and he's not turning that ball over, we can play that game. And other receivers been stepping up. Teams decided they wanted to come in, double Malachi Tony, cool. You got CJ Daniels on the outside winning, having big games. Like, you got guys showing up and making plays when you need it because when I look at the offensive ranks, like Miami's 36th in red zone efficiency, 14th on third down, 32nd on first down, 71st in rush yards, which is actually red because that's terrible. Yards per play, 31st. And on the other side of it, I used top 10 in almost every category except for sacks allowed and passing yards, where they're 34th and 54th. And then, I'm sorry, they're 12th in rushing yards. But then when you take a look at the stat leaders, Carson Beck has thrown for he's thrown for about 240 more yards than Mendoza. Fletcher's rushed for 20 more yards than him, but they do have another almost 1,000-yard back. And then Malachi Tony's better than, let me not say better. He has more receiving yards than Cooper.
But
Which is
also, but also, I feel like Indiana's number one is Santang as of recently, ever since Cooper went down.
no, and he's not. No, I was about to say he's nice. He's nice too, but
It's very balanced attack on both sides. It's really who can make somebody one dimensional. Because if they're both clicking, we might see a game like a 42-35. We never know. The defense might not just show up because they're both that much explosive. But also, I will say, and you said it's the gritty, tough game. Ain't nobody going to out tough Miami in a gritty game, and nobody's going to out tough Mario because you don't have the boys playing. But also, Sig been shown he can win a gritty game against Ohio State, and Penn State it wasn't a gritty game because it was late, but it took a lot of adversity to come back and win.
yeah, no, that's a fact. And man, I think we had some good conversation on this one. So I'm looking. The spread's currently at what 8.5 now, so it's moved up a point.
Good dog.
And the over/unders at 47.5. We don't got to get into all that, but one more time, your winner and a score prediction for this matchup.
I think honestly, Miami comes out early. It punches him in the mouth. Indiana kind of climbs back and gets back into it. But I'm gonna live what I said earlier. I'm gonna change. I'm gonna say 28-24, late touchdown, Carson Beck. I don't know who to, but late touchdown, he gonna go down and win the game, giving him his national championship Heisman moment for everybody to say.
I don't know if that's because you on my show. I'm a fan, but I love to hear that. You know what I'm saying? But I think it's gonna be tough. The trenches and the turnovers. I think there's going to be a turnover or two in this game, and they can be crucial. They're going to be crucial, and I just hope it's not Carson Beck. I hope it's 3 or 4 getting to the quarterback, getting a strip sack or something. But if we can continue to get them off the field on third down and have them in third and long situations where they're not really used to being, it's unfamiliar territory for them, I think it could be a long physical night. I don't think that Miami ever pulls away in this game, although if you make a team one-dimensional that likes to play balanced football because you get a lead on them, things can change. So we'll see how that goes. But I'm going Miami 24-20 in a tough game to win at the crib, put on for the folks. Y'all know the vibes, man. Well, now we gonna get into this NFL playoffs.